They were told it would be easy. Just go out, destroy some boats, and come home for breakfast. But when glowing bullets started flying at their helicopter in the dark, breakfast felt very, very far away. The explosion blinded their camera. The enemy now knew exactly where they were. A missile was aimed at them, and they still had to stay completely, perfectly still, because moving even 1 inch would kill everyone below them. One drone, 2 invisible missiles hunting it from below, a boat carrying 40 bombs racing toward the ocean, and only 4 seconds separating success from disaster.
Imagine you are flying in a helicopter, just 40 feet above the ocean. That is about as high as a 4-story building. The water is splashing below you. It is dark. It is early morning. And somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows, someone is watching you. They have been watching you for 4 whole minutes, and their finger is already on the trigger. This is the story of one of the most intense and heart-pounding helicopter missions ever flown over the Persian Gulf. And I am Kundi from Post America News, and what you are about to hear will leave you breathless. At 5:23 in the morning, 2 military helicopters called the MH-60 Romeo took off on what their commanders called a simple mission. Go out over the water, destroy some boats that were carrying deadly underwater bombs called mines, then come back home in time for breakfast. Simple, right? That is what they thought too. But war has a way of turning simple into terrifying in just a few seconds. Now, let me explain what these mines are, because this is really important. A sea mine is like a giant metal ball filled with explosives that floats just under the surface of the water. When a ship hits one, boom, it explodes and can sink the entire ship. The enemy had already used these mines to shut down 20% of all the oil that travels through this part of the world every single day. That means gas prices going up, trucks not delivering food, factories shutting down. These little metal balls in the water were causing massive problems for the entire planet. So stopping them was not just a military job, it was something the whole world needed. The 2 helicopter crews flew low, skimming just above the waves in the dark. The pilots were trained professionals. They knew what they were doing. But what they did not know was that a soldier on a nearby island had been watching their shadow grow bigger and bigger against the morning sky. And when the helicopters finally got close enough, that soldier opened fire. 2 streams of glowing bullets shot across the water like lines drawn with fire. These were 23mm rounds, which is a very large and very powerful type of bullet. One of those bullets hitting the helicopter's engine would cause it to fall straight into the ocean. The pilots had seconds to react, literally seconds. The pilot of the first helicopter did something incredibly smart and incredibly fast. He shoved the helicopter controls hard and dropped the aircraft down even lower, all the way down to just 40 feet above the water. Now, why would going lower help? Well, here's the cool part. That big gun on the island was pointed at a certain angle. It could not aim any lower than a certain point. By dropping below that point, the helicopter was in a zone where the gun physically could not follow, like trying to shoot something that is rolled under your bed and your arms are just not long enough to reach it. The glowing bullets flew right over the top of the helicopter. The crew had survived by thinking fast and moving faster. But now they had a new problem, and this one was sneaky. When a helicopter flies low over water, its spinning blades push air down really hard onto the surface. This creates heat patterns that show up on special cameras called infrared cameras. Infrared cameras can see heat the way your eyes see light, and the helicopter was leaving a glowing trail behind it on the water, almost like a snail leaving a shiny path on the sidewalk, except this glowing path was almost a mile long, and every single enemy soldier on that island could see it and follow it straight to the helicopter. High above, at 12,000 feet in the sky, a drone called a Reaper had been watching everything for 6 hours. Drones are flying machines with no pilot inside. They're controlled by a person sitting at a computer screen far away, sometimes thousands of miles away. This Reaper could see everything happening on the water from 3 miles up in the sky. It could see the boats. It could see the mines being loaded. It could see the soldiers on the island. But there was one thing it could not see that was about to become a very serious problem. A soldier on the ground had pulled out a weapon called a shoulder-fired missile. This is exactly what it sounds like. A person puts a tube on their shoulder, aims it at a flying thing, and fires a missile that chases the heat coming from the aircraft's engine. These missiles are small enough for one person to carry, but powerful enough to shoot down a helicopter or even a drone. The enemy had been handing these out to soldiers like flashlights before a storm. The soldiers on the island had been awake for 2 days. They had heard what happened to a nearby base 2 days earlier. They knew helicopters were coming. They could hear the sound of the rotors in the dark morning air. They just couldn't see the helicopters yet, but they were ready. Back in the helicopter, the weapons officer, the person in the back seat whose job is to aim and fire the weapons, swung a special camera under the nose of the helicopter onto the first enemy boat. This camera, called a forward-looking infrared sensor, can see heat even in complete darkness. It showed the 2 mines on the boat as big, round, warm circles on the screen. The weapons officer then pointed a laser beam at the boat. You cannot see this laser with your eyes. The enemy cannot detect it or feel it, but the missile the helicopter was about to fire could see it perfectly. Think of it like a cat toy laser pointer. You shine the red dot on the floor and your cat goes crazy chasing it. Except in this case, the laser dot is invisible. The thing chasing it is a missile worth $150,000, and the cat is a boat full of explosives that has no idea what is coming. The weapons officer called out a single word: rifle. That is the code word for firing a missile. The missile dropped off the side of the helicopter with a bright white flash and shot toward the boat. 8 seconds of flight time. During those 8 seconds, the weapons officer had to keep that invisible laser beam pointed perfectly at the boat. If the laser moved away from the target even for a moment, the missile would lose its guide and go off in the wrong direction. Hold steady. Hold steady. Hold steady. The missile hit the boat perfectly. The boat broke apart right at the waterline, and then one of the mines on the boat exploded too, which caused a second giant explosion that threw pieces of the boat 30 meters through the air. The mission was working. But now 2 problems hit the helicopter crew at exactly the same time, and both of them were bad. First, the infrared camera went completely white. When something huge and hot explodes right in front of an infrared camera, it is like pointing a regular camera directly at the sun. Everything goes bright white and you cannot see anything for a few seconds. The crew had special controls to fix this, kind of like manually adjusting the brightness on your phone screen when you walk from a dark room into bright sunlight. But it took 4 seconds to get the picture back, 4 seconds of not being able to see anything. Second, and this was the really dangerous part, that big white flash from the missile hitting the boat had told every single enemy soldier on the island exactly where the helicopter was hovering. Before the flash, they could hear the helicopter but could not find it in the dark sky. Now they had a target, and that soldier with the shoulder-fired missile was pulling it out of his case right now. When the picture came back on the infrared camera, the weapons officer could see things had changed on the pier below. Engines were starting up on boats that had been sitting still. Everyone was trying to escape into the open water. The weapons officer swung the camera to the second boat and called rifle again. At that exact moment, the pilot felt the whole helicopter shake as a burst of large bullets passed close enough to the aircraft that he could actually hear them through the canopy windows. He held position. He did not move. He did not try to escape because the missile he had just fired needed 7 more seconds of steady laser to reach its target. Move the helicopter and the laser moves away from the boat and the missile loses guidance. So he sat there completely still while huge bullets flew past and counted down 7 seconds that felt like 7 years. The second missile hit the boat. The third boat was already damaged from the first explosion, and a missile caught it in the middle of its hull. 3 boats destroyed in 90 seconds. The big gun on the island was firing the entire time, and the pier was turning into a smoking wreck. But the fourth helicopter, the second one flying nearby, had what everyone agreed was the worst problem of the morning. There was a fast attack boat at the far end of the pier. This was not a simple fishing boat with mines on the deck. This was a proper military vessel, 14 meters long with a heavy machine gun mounted on the front and 3 mines sitting on the back deck. And the moment the shooting started, this boat had gunned its engine and was now racing away across the water at 45 knots. That's about 50 miles per hour on the ocean, which is extremely fast for a boat. And it was shooting back. Green, glowing tracer bullets were cutting across the water at 600 rounds per minute. And up on the ridge, the soldier with the shoulder-fired missile had finally gotten his weapon locked onto the second helicopter. Now here's where things got really complicated, and I need you to follow this carefully because it is incredible. The helicopter needed to climb higher to fire its missile at the fast boat. The missile needs height to work properly. If you fire it flat and low across the water, the missile's brain cannot tell the difference between the boat and the ocean surface. It is like trying to spot one candle in a room full of candles. But above 100 feet, the engine's heat stands out clearly against the cool sky above, and the missile gets a perfect lock. So the zone below 100 feet was safe from the shoulder missile, but useless for firing at the fast boat. The zone above 140 feet was needed for the missile shot, but meant getting locked by the shoulder weapon. The only survivable space in the air was a band about 80 feet tall, and the machine gun on the fast boat was filling that space with tracers from below. And then the drone spotted a second soldier with a shoulder weapon on the other side of the water. Two missile teams on opposite sides. Move away from one and you fly straight toward the other. The pilot made his choice. He climbed to 140 feet. The weapons officer slammed the camera onto the fast boat moving at 45 knots through the water. The machine gun on the boat walked its tracers toward the helicopter. The soldier with the shoulder weapon heard the helicopter climb, and his weapon began growling. That growling sound means the missile has found its target and is ready to fire. 30 more sounds of that growling and he could pull the trigger. The weapons officer called rifle. The missile screamed off the helicopter and dove toward the speeding boat. The machine gun kept firing. A tracer bullet crossed just 50 meters below the front of the helicopter, close enough that the other pilot sitting in the front seat actually flinched. The weapons officer held the laser absolutely still. One hand on the aiming controller, the other braced hard against the inside of the aircraft. The missile hit the fast attack boat right at the engine, and the three mines sitting on the back deck all exploded one after another in a chain. The fireball was so big it could be seen from 12 miles away. The pilot immediately shoved the controls down and dropped below the ridge line of the island. Now the island itself was between the helicopter and the soldier with the shoulder weapon. The soldier had spent 37 seconds with that heavy tube on his shoulder, waiting and tracking, and the helicopter disappeared behind the rocks before he ever got to fire. His partner grabbed a second missile. He raised it up, but there was no sky behind the helicopter anymore, just rock, no target, no shot. He lowered the second missile unfired.
The first helicopter cleaned up what remained. A fifth missile caught another boat at the pier trying to quietly sneak away to the north, moving slow and staying close to the shore, hoping nobody would notice. That kind of thinking does not work very well when the other side has infrared cameras that can see heat in complete darkness. The sixth and final missile hit the last boat still tied to the dock. By the time the smoke started to clear, the entire southern pier of this island was burning from one end to the other. 6 missiles, 6 boats, 2 helicopters, and it was still early morning. But 60 miles to the north, the drone that had been watching everything from high above had turned its camera toward a different harbor. And what it saw there made everything that just happened look like a practice run. At 12,000 feet above another location, the drone's sensor operator, the person controlling the camera from a ground station 6,000 miles away on the other side of the world, stared at his screen and started counting. 8 small boats at the main pier, 3 more at a second dock, a large military fast attack ship armed with cruise missiles, and behind that ship a landing craft 50 meters long, which is about half the length of a football field, with its entire upper deck packed with neat rows of pallets. 45 or more sea mines, all loaded, all ready to go, already moving toward the harbor exit. More targets than the drone had missiles, and this location was going to be much harder than the island had been. In the past 11 days, 11 drones exactly like this one had been shot down over this region, 1 per day. The main weapon being used against them was something called a loitering missile. This is a missile that flies in circles in the sky, waiting, looking for heat sources below it. It has no radar of its own. It makes no sound that would warn a drone's sensors. It just circles and watches with infrared eyes. Think about your house cat sitting perfectly still under the bird feeder in the backyard. No movement, no sound, just two eyes locked on a small bird that has absolutely no idea the cat is there. Except this cat closes in at 190 knots and the bird never sees it coming. Every 30 seconds, the sensor operator had to stop watching the harbor and quickly scan the sky around the drone for these hunting missiles. 2 seconds of sky scanning meant 2 seconds of not watching the boats he was trying to destroy before they escaped into open water. It is like trying to swat a wasp while parallel parking. The wasp doesn't even need to actually sting you to ruin your whole morning. This particular drone was one of only a few in the area that carried a special self-protection system under its wing. This system detects incoming threats and fires off countermeasures, little flares and signals designed to confuse a heat-seeking missile and make it miss. It was supposed to protect against the hunting missiles. The word "supposed to" was about to become very important. The strike order came 14 seconds after it was requested. First target was a mine layer boat pulling away from the pier heading east. Laser on. Rifle. 22 seconds of flight time. The sensor operator had to hold that laser beam steady through 4,500 meters of humid Gulf air. Humidity scatters a laser beam the way fog scatters car headlights. But the missile hit clean. The mines on the boat cooked off in the heat and caused a secondary explosion. The boat next to it got caught in the blast too. 2 boats destroyed with 1 missile. 6 seconds of camera blindness from the double explosion. When the picture came back, the large military ship in the harbor had turned on its radar. This was a problem not because the radar could hurt the drone up at 12,000 feet, and not because the ship's missiles could reach that high, since they were designed to hit other ships at sea level. The problem was the radio. The ship's captain was broadcasting the drone's exact position, altitude, and flight path to every air defense unit along the coast. Shore-based soldiers with shoulder-fired missiles were now getting real-time information about exactly where to aim. Those hills behind the harbor gave the shoulder-fired missiles enough starting altitude that they could reach almost 11,000 feet. The drone was at 12,000 feet. That gap between 11,000 and 12,000 feet is what a bank would call an uncomfortably thin margin. And now hunters with weapons that could almost reach the drone had detailed targeting map being broadcast directly to them. 30 seconds before that targeting information reached the actual shooters, the drone still had an entire harbor full of escaping boats to deal with. The sensor operator timed his next shot carefully. There was a crane arm on the nearby pier, swinging back and forth in the wind from the explosions. Its operator had run away when the shooting started. Every time the arm swung past, it broke the laser for a fraction of a second. At the speed that missile travels, even a tiny break in the laser means the missile goes unguided for 90 meters. So he waited. He watched the rhythm of the swinging crane arm. He waited for the arm to swing clear. Then he put the laser on the big military ship in the middle of its deck. Rifle. 22 seconds. The crane swung once through the beam during flight. The missile adjusted, reacquired the laser, corrected its path, hit the ship right where the missiles were stored below deck. The explosion was enormous. The pressure wave from the blast snapped the thick rope holding the mine-carrying landing craft to the pier. The bow of the landing craft swung free, and the whole 50-meter vessel started drifting toward the harbor mouth on its own, picking up speed in the current, heading for open water with 40 mines still on its deck. At that exact moment, the self-protection system under the drone's wing chirped. There was a hot point on the wide camera, an infrared signature climbing up directly toward the drone from below. The first hunting missile had found it, and the landing craft was running for open water. 2 crises happening at exactly the same second. What the sensor operator couldn't see, and what nobody at the control station thousands of miles away would learn until after the mission was over, was that a second hunting missile had launched 40 seconds earlier from a position the drone's cameras had never covered. It was already at 11,000 feet and climbing. The first missile that everyone saw on the cameras was not the real danger. The second one, the invisible one, already almost at the drone's altitude, was. The pilot flying the drone commanded a hard right turn. The drone broke away from its orbit. The first hunting missile, which had been riding the heat trail of the engines, lost its precise track in the turn. 400 meters of separation, close enough that when it detonated, the explosion filled the camera display like a second sunrise appearing in the wrong direction. A second drone arrived with 8 fresh missiles and took over tracking the scattered boats in the harbor. The first drone locked on to the landing craft, which was now past the harbor entrance and moving into open water at speed. From 12,000 feet, with 3 miles of distance between the drone and the target, there was no machine gun that could reach this altitude. No soldier on the ground could walk tracer fire toward an engine he couldn't even see. The only things that could touch the drone up there were the hunting missiles, and one of them was still out there somewhere, closing from the east. The weapons officer switched the warhead. The new warhead works by creating a massive pressure wave that expands outward in all directions from the explosion. The laser had to land in a very specific spot on the deck of the moving boat. 2 meters of precision from 3 miles up in humid Gulf air on a target moving at 8 knots through its own wake. Miss that spot, and 40 mines would reach the shipping lanes by nightfall and close the entire strait to all ships for weeks. The missile warning system chirped again. Second hunting missile, bearing from the east, at 10,000 feet and climbing, 20 seconds to the range where it could engage the drone. The missile the drone had just fired needed 24 seconds to reach the landing craft. That meant the drone had to hold its position for 24 seconds, while the hunting missile had only 20 seconds before it could fire. 4 seconds of margin, 4 seconds between completing the mission and losing the drone. The sensor operator held the laser on the deck of the moving landing craft. The gimbal system, which keeps the camera pointing at the same spot even as the aircraft moves, was working constantly to correct for drift. Keeping a laser beam on a 2-meter target on a moving boat from 3 miles up, with the whole aircraft turning, felt like threading a needle on a bumpy bus while someone throws things at your head. At 6 seconds from impact, the pilot commanded a brake. The self-protection system threw out its countermeasures. The hunting missile's sensor wavered just slightly off the heat signature from the engine, just enough. The warhead reached the landing craft first. The pressure explosion ripped across the open deck from front to back, first pallet, second pallet, third pallet, fourth pallet, bow to stern in under half a second. The landing craft broke into 2 pieces, and a white fireball punched up through the Gulf humidity so high it was visible for many miles. The hunting missile dove straight into the fireball and disappeared inside it. In under 40 minutes, 2 helicopters and 2 drones had destroyed the mining operation at the island pier and sunk the largest mine-carrying vessel in the northern harbor's entire fleet. 60 or more sea mines that would never reach the shipping lanes, enough mines to close one of the most important passages for oil in the entire world for weeks. Stopped by a small number of people